I have a Rubik's Cube. And of course you can tell that it is not solved. So what I'm gonna do is solve this Rubik's Cube right here before your eyes. So first thing I'm gonna do, start from my side. Just wait a minute. Now start from the side. Alright, and let's go. So we have a cross, and we have all of our set pieces. You just do this little trick corner, just raise it, yellow, 1, 2, 3. This one's bleeding green, so you can't start there. This one's bleeding green, it's not just one side. And this one's bleeding green, so those are only one. So we'll do this. What is going on, guys? So today we're back with another deep dive, and today we're going to be looking at Alolan Ninetales, which is a fairy and ice type Pokemon maxing out at 2309. Now to get into the Great League, we do need to hit a 0 on the attack, 14 defense, and 12 stamina at level 25. Although that's not quite 100% accurate, because Alolan Ninetales is going to be one of those Pokemon that you're probably going to get out of an egg, and if you don't go trading for it, then it is going to kind of make it a little bit different. So for that, like, just egg hatch IV spread that you're really looking for, a 10 on the attack, 15 defense, and 13 stamina really yields a nice stat product for the Great League, while at least hitting 1500 on the dot. Now that is at level 23.5. I didn't write this down, so I had to look it up. Now when we compare Alolan Ninetales to the entire Ferocious Cup, and we just kind of filter them by bulk and then sort them. So when we put Alolan Ninetales up against the entire Ferocious Cup and we sort by bulk and then by stat product, just to kind of see where we fall, Alolan Ninetales ends up being 17th in bulk and 16th in stat product, which is actually pretty freaking good. Now, of course, all of those numbers do derive basically from our base stats here, with a 170 on attack, 193 on defense, and a 177 on stamina. That is one of the better IV spreads that we've seen lately for PvP. Lots of TDO, really low attack, kind of lets us maximize our time in the ring, which is what we're looking for. Now, when it comes to moves, like I said, we did get the addition of Charm here, and there are a ton of moves to actually go through. So Feint Attack, Powder Snow, and Charm are our 3 fast moves. We have Feint Attack with 3 energy per turn for 3 damage per turn, because we are not a dark type Pokemon, no stab. Then we do have Powder Snow for 4 energy per turn for 2 damage per turn, but after stab it does get bumped up to 2.4. Kind of low on the damage, unfortunately. Charm, though, is kind of like the flip side of that. 2 on the energy, which is always really low, but a whopping 5.33 damage per turn. After stab it does get bumped up to a whopping 6.4. So pretty hefty in the damage department. Moving on to our charge moves, we do have Dazzling Gleam, Ice Beam, Blizzard, and Psyshock. So we do have 4 different moves to go with here. Dazzling Gleam for 70 energy at 110 damage at a 1.57 damage per energy ratio. After stab it does get bumped up to 132 on the damage, which makes it a 1.89. Ice Beam for 55 energy, we get 90 damage at a 1.64. After stab it does get bumped up to 108 on the damage, which does make it a 1.96. Again, pretty sweet. Blizzard for 75 energy, we get 130 damage at a 1.73 damage per energy ratio, but after stab it does get bumped up to the 156, which does make it a 2.08, our most efficient move by far in Blizzard. Last but not least, though, Psyshock for 45 energy, we get 70 damage at a 1.56, but we do not carry that psychic typing, so no stab on that one. Now, out of all these moves, we basically have to boil it down to which 3 do we want to run with. In the fast move area, it's a little wonky, because on one hand we have Powder Snow, which is insanely good energy for pretty mediocre damage, but then we have Charm, which is mediocre energy for freaking amazing damage. So kind of difficult to choose there. But in our charge moves, it's pretty simple. If you really boil it down, Ice Beam and Psyshock seem to be the 2 most prevalent ones here. Ice Beam and Psyshock are both going to be our 2 lowest energy cost moves, which means we get to fire them as fast as we possibly can. And then they're actually decently efficient, with Ice Beam actually being a 1.96 after stab. That's actually pretty freaking efficient. It's only just behind Blizzard, but for a lot less of the cost. While you don't get all of the oomph and the damage out of it, you still get a huge huge payoff. Psyshock, while it's not necessarily like an amazing move by any rate, it is fairly decent, and it actually helps us cover a little bit of more coverage being a Psychic type move, so I'm all for that. So we're basically going to stick Powder Snow and Charm up against each other to see which one of these is actually better. Now, in true deep dive fashion, of course, I ran a bunch of simulations on this to try to figure it out. So let's get into those. Starting out against the entire cup in the 0 versus 0 shield scenario, we actually have a tie right off the bat. Powder Snow and Charm both end up pulling a 54.7. Nice. In the 2 versus 0, we do start to see Powder Snow pull up just a little bit with an 88.4 versus the 87.4 that Charm ends up getting us. Next, in the 0 versus 2, Powder Snow gets us a whopping 1.1%. Hi, I'm Powder Snow. I'll be leaving. Charm, on the other hand, does get a whopping 37.9, which is huge. I always say double digits is like bare minimum for me, and 37.9 just blows that completely out of the water. Lastly, in the 2 versus 2 shield scenario, we actually end up with a 47.4 for Powder Snow and a whopping 73.7 for Charm. So immediately, that's like so huge. You average all those together to kind of get like what you would think is like an average performance across all of your shield scenarios. You're looking at about a 47.9 for Powder Snow, but a 63.425% for Charm, which says a lot. But let's actually take a look inside the actual condensed meta to try to figure out which one of these performs better up against the Pokemon that you're probably going to see more often than the ones in just the regular cup. Starting in the 0 versus 0, we actually end up with a 32% for Powder Snow with a 52% for Charm. So already Charm is right out of the gate, slapping some booty there. 1 versus 0, we actually end up with a 68% for Powder Snow with an 88%. And then in the 0 versus 1, we actually end up with a whopping 4% for Powder Snow, with a 20% on Charm. So Charm, of course, is already. Last but not least, in the 1v1, we do end up with a 40% for Powder Snow with a 48% for Charm. So in every single one of those scenarios, we did heaps and bounds better with Charm. And if you average them all together, it really starts to show here. 36% for Powder Snow with a 52% for Charm. So I guess you could say in the average sense of the meta, as long as myself nor my opponent ends up using 2 full shields on an entire Pokemon, you're more than likely gonna like coin flip if you win in the meta. So with that being said, the biggest takeaway here is that Charm is definitely gonna perform better, not only up against the entire cup, but totally up against the meta as well. Therefore, we're gonna go with Charm, Ice Beam, and Psyshock, which it actually works out pretty well there because those charge moves being relatively low to fire means that we probably won't get to fire them very often with Charm, but at least we'll have a better chance. For what it's worth, I do think that Powder Snow could be a little interesting in some matchups. So I wouldn't completely count it out. You may have to do a little bit of your in real world testing on your own for this, but Powder Snow coupled with Ice Beam and Psyshock would be insanely fast. That would be super fun, super quick to play with. I think I would enjoy that. So now let's actually take a look at some of those 1v1 matches that we had in the meta and kind of break these down into our wins versus losses to kind of figure out what we actually win and lose up against. So up against the meta in the 1v1, remember we had a 48% here, so it's almost split straight down the middle. As far as our wins go, we have Raikou, Shelgon, Alolan Raticate, Raichu, Umbreon Furret, Donphan with Counter, Granbull, Donphan with Charm, Minun, Delcatty, and Lickitung, rounding out the end of our wins there. Now, we do have 2 ties. One is up against ourselves for what it's worth, but we also do have a tie up against Vaporeon, so keep that in mind. Technically, it's not really a loss, but you know my whole story on that. In our losses, though, we do have Piloswine, Suicune, Bibarel, Skuntank, Pachirisu, Alolan Sandslash, Nidoqueen, Torkoal, Larion, and Alolan Marowak. So in this part of the deep dive, I would typically break down those losses even further into their respective typings, just to kind of see like which ones you really need to look out for in terms of like an entire typing wise, but it's kind of hard to do this round. So thanks to some helpful comments that we got in the last 2 deep dives, I came up with a new section that I'm calling Ripe or Rotten. It's basically a section where we talk about the right picks that you should be putting up against with your Alolan Ninetales and basically pairing them off to have bigger success versus the rotten Pokemon that you really want to be looking out for because they're basically going to be hard counters for you. So starting off in the ripe section, we do have Vaporeon, Suicune, and Donphan. These are 3 that I thought of that were really good paired with Alolan Ninetales. Now the reason is basically because they're gonna be really good up against the rotten ones that we talk about. They're basically the safest counters to the rotten side, and I think basically covering yourself is kind of the whole name of the game in a lot of scenarios, but there are some unique interactions between Pokemon that simulations can't tell. So if you by chance have a unique pairing or just a team of 3 that includes Alolan Ninetales that you seem to think works really well, let me know, because I'd be interested. As far as the rotten Pokemon goes, so these are basically the Pokemon that we just really want to avoid. Torkoal, Alolan Marowak, and Lairon. Now, out of all of those, it's pretty easy to tell that they basically just play into our weaknesses. Because we do have Fairy and Ice as our typing, Fire is going to be a problem, and Steel is going to be a problem. So, all 3 of those make a lot of sense to try to avoid here. Out of the other Pokemon that we lost against, like Piloswine, Suicune, Bibarel, Skuntank, yeah, those are potential threats, but they're not as like hardcore counters as these 3. Basically, those are going to be the hardest ones to go up against, and if you end up getting switch locked into one of these, you might as well just count Alolan Ninetales completely out, unless by chance you have some crazy like energy stored up and you just release the wrath of Arceus on him. I don't know. So, that is actually going to be it for Alolan Ninetales, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you're interested in voting for a deep dive, go ahead and join that Discord down below. But until the next video, I'm going to go ahead and play those ending credits for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Always remember that if you like to like videos, you could do that, but if you don't, you could be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in the comments below about the video. I do highly appreciate you guys watching. If you guys want to support me in any way, there are several links down in the description for Patreon, joining the community here on YouTube, or even just directly PayPal if that's your thing. I greatly appreciate everyone's name that's on screen, as you guys have showed some sort of support outside of just viewing the videos, and I thank you guys. You don't understand from the bottom of my heart. So until our next video, guys, I will catch you then.